Good day. Our program will begin in just a moment. Good day, and welcome to Advocacy Anywhere, powered by American Jewish Committee. Advocacy Anywhere is AJC's digital platform that enables you to engage with AJC's global expertise, content, and advocacy from wherever you are. Jewish students today face unprecedented challenges in schools, making the need for effective advocacy more urgent than ever. AJC's Center for Education Advocacy is building long-term solutions by partnering with education leaders, empowering parents and students, and creating frameworks for safe, inclusive learning environments for Jewish students and parents at all levels of the education system. Here with us today are some of the AJC experts driving these solutions. After we hear from our guests, time permitting, we will take your questions. You may email your questions to questions@ajc.org, questions is plural, or you can use the Q&A feature in Zoom. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Lisa Pruzan, Chair of AJC Center for Education Advocacy. Lisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa Pruzan, Chair of AJC Center for Education Advocacy, and thank you all for joining us today. AJC launched the Center for Education Advocacy, or CEA, in 2024 to fundamentally change how educational institutions approach Jewish inclusion and democratic values. What makes CEA unique is our comprehensive strategy to engage at every level, from federal and state policy to individual schools, campuses, administrators, and students. Our goal is to help shape educational institutions that are resilient against anti-Semitism and rooted in the critical thinking and civic engagement that are fundamental to a thriving democracy. We leverage AJC's reputation for trustworthy and responsible advocacy to build strategic and lasting partnerships nationwide. We are entering a new Jewish year, a new school year, and we are approaching the second anniversary of October 7th, as Jewish students and families continue to navigate unprecedented challenges in schools across America. Yet, there's profound reason for hope. In just over a year, CEA has emerged as the trusted go-to resource for education leaders committed to creating safe, inclusive, and brave learning environments for all of their students. As our partners, we want you to know what the Center for Education Advocacy is doing and how we are creating measurable and sustainable change. Today, we will address the questions we hear most frequently from the Jewish community and from educators themselves. 1, what needs to change in our educational institutions? And 2, how is the Center for Education Advocacy creating the meaningful, sustainable change we need? To answer these questions, I am pleased to introduce Dr. Laura Shaw-Frank, Vice President of AJC's Center for Education Advocacy. Laura and her team have been working tirelessly on behalf of all of us, and it is my pleasure and privilege to work with them day in and day out. And Laura, the floor is yours. But I'm going to start with a question, so the floor is not yours yet. Laura, how did the Center for Education Advocacy come to be, and how do you work in the education space?
So thank you, Lisa, and thank you so much to everyone who's tuned in here today. AJC's actually been working in education spaces for a long time. We've been taking university presidents to Israel on our AJC Project Interchange delegations for many years, maybe even decades, long before my time at AJC. In 2022, we co-sponsored the first University Presidents Summit on confronting anti-Semitism with Hillel International and the American Council on Education, hosted by NYU. We've been working in the public and independent K-12 schools across the country for years, offering professional development for teachers on understanding the Jewish community and anti-Semitism, and helping administrators with policies and procedures to ensure inclusive communities for Jews. So in many ways, I would say we saw this coming. We saw the rising problems. We saw the normalization of anti-Semitism before October 7th. Obviously, no one was fully prepared for the tsunami of anti-Semitism in education spaces that occurred after October 7th, but at least on some level, because we'd been doing this work, we saw it coming. After October 7th, when we came back to work that Monday, I think it was October 9th, we immediately realized that we were in full-on crisis mode. We were getting calls and emails every minute. The news was reporting insane occurrences in schools and colleges. The universities and schools were issuing statements about October 7th that were so problematic, and the Jewish community was rightly incredibly upset. There were already protests beginning on campuses. Professors were saying terrible things. Students were saying terrible things. And all of this while the Jewish community was in shock and suffering from enormous grief about the events of October 7th. It was really awful. So we made the decision to create a morning crisis call that brought together all the AJC professionals who were working in education spaces. At the time, that meant bringing together most of two different departments. We met every morning to triage, and we pretty quickly realized that we needed a unified center to bring all of our education work into one space. And thanks to the generosity of visionary donors, we were able to announce the launching of the Center for Education Advocacy at Global Forum in 2024. So as the center took shape, it mirrored, and this is not surprising, AJC's commitment to grass tops work with transformational leaders to make strategic and enduring change. We developed different departments to manage the different areas of our work. So we have higher education administration work, where we work with presidents, provosts, vice presidents for student life, trustees, and umbrella higher ed organizations like the American Council on Education. We have K through 12 administration, where we work with heads of school, principals, superintendents, directors of inclusion and belonging, and also umbrella organizations like the National Association for Independent Schools, regional independent school associations, national teachers unions, and more. We work with students, Jewish high school students, and student college leaders from around the world. We work with parents of Jewish students in K through 12 spaces who want help understanding how they can work for change in their children's schools. And most recently, we added education policy, which is utilizing local, state, and federal rules and regulations to ensure that schools are safe for and inclusive of Jewish students. We're going to bring in our professionals who lead this work on the ground in a little bit. But just for a quick overview, our work includes a lot of education about Jewish identity and anti-Semitism, both of which are woefully not understood. We visit a lot of schools and a lot of colleges to teach administrators and faculty. We offer educational programming for parents and students. We also include a lot of policy guidance in our work. We've created a very robust library of resources that help guide folks on how to make change. Our key and number one resource is our action plans. We have action plans for higher ed administrators, K through 12 public and independent school administrators, Jewish parents, and Jewish students. And those action plans really lay out our strategic roadmap for change in education institutions. Schools that follow our action plans and implement those recommendations will be resilient against anti-Semitism. At the same time, we also create guidance documents that address more specific issues that might arise in school spaces, like, for example, guidance we just issued this week for addressing the anniversary of October 7th in schools. We really encourage all of you to look for our emails and visit our page on the AJC website regularly for updated resources. And of course, we partner with our 25 regional offices to bring our strategy and guidance to the local level. We could not work without our regional offices. Our professional staff and lay leaders on the ground have been and will continue to be incredibly effective advocates for our action plans, for education, for strategic guidance. And I want to just share with all of you that we are currently working on a very robust strategy for our work with regional offices, and we will update the community as we roll out that plan. I hope that answers your question, Lisa.
Sorry. Thank you, Laura. That was great. We know everyone here is familiar with the problems that Jewish people have experienced in education spaces over the past few years, and of course, particularly since October 7th. You've spoken a bit about the structure of the center and your work. Could you delve more into how CEA is tackling these problems that are in so many places, on campuses, in K through 12 schools, with students, faculties, and administrators? What is your theory of change?
Thank you, because that is such an important question. Without a theory of change that holds our work together, I would argue we actually can't make change. So let me begin by making two overall structural points about our work. First of all, it's super important that we see the education sector as an arc. It is a complete arc of K through 12 and higher ed. And those two areas can't be divorced from one another. They feed each other in a constant loop. Students on campus come from K through 12 spaces, and students on campus return to the K through 12 space as educators, as administrators, and as parents. So we need to think about the education sphere holistically. Second of all, we see our work as long-term. As we talked about a little bit a minute ago, the problems we've experienced in education spaces, the harassment, the exclusion, the dangerous rhetoric, the false narratives, even the violence, the lack of knowledge about, and the minimization of anti-Semitism, all of that exploded on October 7th. but the roots long predate October 7th. Those challenges have been building for years, and they will not be eradicated in a year or two. We are in it for the long game. We have to understand that. We will see improvement, and we already have, but we are not going to fix this overnight. Most importantly, though, now that I've kind of given those two overarching things, what I want to focus on is the theory of change, which is building long-term trusted partnerships with leaders who have the power to make change. That means we work collaboratively with education leaders. We offer reliable and vetted education and strategic guidance to help them build educational institutions that are resilient against anti-Semitism and places of full belonging for Jewish students. There are many different ways to make change. In the education space, there are organizations that use tools like litigation and public shaming and others. And those methods can be very effective, and we believe that different types of change making can help bring about the future that we want to see. Sorry, hold on one second. But they are not the only way to make change. And we believe very, very strongly in our theory of change as being the most transformational and effective one there is. Being a trusted partner to an education leader means understanding where they are and what problems they are grappling with. And we know from talking to them that university presidents and school heads are navigating literally unprecedented complexity. They're balancing free speech with student safety, academic freedom with community standards, competing political pressures from the federal government, from trustees, from donors, from faculty, from students, from parents. Many are genuinely trying to do the right thing while managing institutions that were literally never designed for the polarized moment we're living in. And what we have learned is when we lead with blame, when we make these educational partners our enemy, we accomplish something, yes, but often not what we intended. We put our partners in a defensive crouch. We make them less likely to listen, less willing to take risks, less open to new approaches. And we turn potential allies into opponents who associate us with humiliation rather than collaborative problem solving. So I want to say that what we are doing is not naive or weak. It's strategic, and we believe the most effective way to make change. I want to talk about another really important element of our theory of change, and that's the democratic lens. Like so many Americans, educators are worried about democracy in this country. AJC's State of Anti-Semitism report last year showed that 66% of Americans have less trust in the way democracy is functioning in the United States. That's 2/3 of American society, not just Republicans, not just Democrats, not one gender, not one age. It is a shared concern of a significant majority of our society. And educators are responsible for educating the next generation of American citizens. And in general, they really take that responsibility seriously. And here's the thing. We know that the work of making educational institutions resilient against anti-Semitism and inclusive of Jews and Jewish identity is fully intertwined with ensuring that our educational institutions are preparing our students for a thriving and vibrant American democracy. There are a lot of challenges to our democracy right now. We're very polarized. In fact, this morning I was reading an article that there was a poll released by the New York Times that shows that 64% of Americans believe we're too politically divided to solve our problems. We literally can't talk to each other about difficult issues. We face an unending tidal wave of misinformation and disinformation online. We face educators and curricular providers who try to teach students what to think instead of how to think. All of those problems are fertile soil, as we know, for anti-Semitism, and they simultaneously weaken our democracy. So when we speak with educators, we engage them in our shared concern. We show them that confronting anti-Semitism in their schools through giving students the tools to have difficult conversations with those with whom they disagree, analyze material to understand misinformation and disinformation, engage in critical thinking. Those tools are going to simultaneously fight anti-Semitism, improve education, and contribute to building a stronger America. And that message resonates enormously with our partners, as it should. We understand that this work is very retail, but that's why it works. It's only when education leaders know us and trust us that we can effectively work together to achieve change. And we have evidence that it works. I want to share that almost exactly a year ago, really is basically a year ago, less than a year after October 7th, when tensions on campus were so high and fraught, AJC hosted the largest ever University President's Summit on confronting anti-Semitism, together with Hillel International and the American Council on Education. We had 78 presidents there, spending an entire day with us to learn about anti-Semitism and think through strategies to combat it on their campus. It was an incredible event. And this past May, we had 32 New York City independent school heads and teams join us for a similar summit that we convened in partnership with New York University's Center for the Study of Anti-Semitism. As Sarah Kudin, our Director of Academic Affairs, as we'll share more about in a few minutes, AJC entered into a historic statement with the Association of American Universities and the American Council on Education back in May, where those organizations, which oversee over 1,200 colleges and universities nationwide, pledged, quote, continuing consequential reform and transparent action to root out anti-Semitism. When the National Association for Independent School People of Color Conference became a site of some egregious anti-Semitism, it was CEA that worked directly with NAIS administration to think through next steps. Our work has touched literally tens of thousands of educational organizations, universities, K-12 schools, parents, and students across the country. We are the first address for countless K-12 schools and institutions of higher education and education organizations when they need help, when they need guidance, when they need education, when they need partnership, as we work to solve the problems in our education system for the future. We truly are making substantive change every day. And I just want to say to all of our listeners, we hope that you will be our partners in this work.
Laura, thank you. That was amazing. And I'm so glad that you included so many of the successes that CEA has had, because we do know the news is overwhelming and never ending. So to give us those really substantive and concrete changes that have been made so far is really fantastic for everyone to hear about. And I want to also let everybody know that since this past Global Forum of 2025, we've added 3 amazing vice chairs to CEA. And I want to thank Ula Zussman, Jill Zyman, and Randy Hubert for being so integral to the work that everyone at CEA is doing. So thank you. And Laura, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. We are so incredibly grateful for your leadership and the leadership of Ula, Jill, and Randy. We really couldn't do it without you. So at this point, I want to expand the conversation and give our audience an opportunity to hear directly from a few members of the CEA team. We're going to start the furthest upstream with a look at the policy landscape, which is the newest area of our work. So pleased to introduce the newest member of our CEA team, Gail Horowitz, our Director of Education Policy. Gail, can you briefly introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Laura. I am so glad to be with everyone today and extremely happy and proud to have been able to join CEA this past June. Just to share a little bit more about my background, prior to joining CEA, I was a senior attorney for 15 years with the U.S. Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights, OCR. While I was there, I handled hundreds of cases involving claims of discrimination against students, really on all different bases, race and national origin, which includes anti-Semitism, as well as disability and sex. So I saw a very wide variety. I also spent 4 years in Ed's policy writing office, and there I worked on national regulations and guidances for schools and colleges that focused on helping them meet all of their non-discrimination obligations. So my background really provides lots of great crossover to our work at CEA.
Gail, my gosh, you have no relevant experience at all. Can you tell us some more about what education policy includes and touch on how focusing on policy will enhance CEA's work?
Yes, I would love to. So education policy is really just the collection of laws, rules, and other priorities that guide what students should learn, how schools are organized, and who is making the decisions. My role at CEA is to help determine how we can leverage this world of rules and our relationships with the rule makers to advance our values. Good education policy will require schools to treat students fairly, respect their differences, and promote inclusion. Ideally, great policies will also prevent many problems, such as a lesson that includes anti-Semitic tropes or a Zionist student who's being excluded from participation, all before they start. Yet where problems do occur, and we know they do, unfortunately, a strong policy can provide transparent guidelines for how a family can complain, and then how the school must respond and support the student. So to put it another way, while we may not always see it right in the foreground, education policy provides a really essential background structure to prevent and address discrimination. It clarifies a student's rights, a school's responsibilities, and all of our community expectations. At CEA, I'm excited to share today that our policy work will target several key priorities. Most importantly, we will advocate for accurate and inclusive curricula about Jews and Israel in our K-12 public schools. We believe that broadening access to comprehensive information about Jews, Jewish history, and our diverse community is really vital. Not only is it fighting anti-Semitism, but it also protects our pluralistic democracy more broadly, as you touched on. But we know too few students actually have the chance to access this important material because there are threats coming from all across the political spectrum. And I'll just name a few for our audience. In some states, school districts have adopted a curriculum known as liberated ethnic studies. Instead of celebrating the contributions of our diverse, multi-ethnic society, which is something AJC strongly supports, this very problematic liberated curriculum actually normalizes anti-Semitic bias and in many cases demonizes Israel. In other states, schools are responding to recent federal and state efforts to eliminate DEI programs by taking a step back and reevaluating what, if anything, they can teach their students about different groups and histories, even Holocaust history. So this too is very problematic. And finally, other schools are navigating new requirements to include Christianity in their lessons or even ban books, many of which touch on Jewish themes and history. So there's a lot to consider here and a lot to work on. Working closely with AJC's political policy and political affairs departments, as well as our incredible regional offices. And here I want to give a particular shout out to our New England and California offices who have been so engaged in some of these issues on the ground already. CEA looks forward to creating new resources that schools, policymakers, and all of our advocates can use to drive change in their own communities. We're also going to focus on building more relationships with our key education policy leaders and continuing our ongoing work to develop non-discrimination laws and policies at all levels. We know this is an ambitious agenda, but we look forward to working across AJC and with all our regional offices and lay leaders to further establish CEA as a vitally needed, important thought leader in this area.
Thank you so much, Gail. I'm now going to turn to Dr. Sarah Kudin, our Director of Academic Affairs. Hi, Sarah. Given that college campuses have drawn the most attention regarding the inclusion and safety of Jewish students, can you talk a little bit about how AJC is working directly with university leaders to create lasting change in higher ed?
Of course I can. I'm happy to. Hi, everyone. So a thriving higher education sector is also key to a thriving America. And it's really because universities drive innovation and research in this country. Universities, as Laura mentioned, are the training grounds for future citizens, professionals, community leaders. They also generate ideas that have had and will continue to have enormous impact in our culture. Think about intersectionality, post-colonialism, the theory of relativity. That one's a bit complicated. We can't afford to forsake higher education. We really have to find ways to seek reform so that universities don't tolerate or propagate anti-Jewish hate. We rightly expect universities to be places that understand the Jewish experience in its full and dynamic complexity, and to contribute to an even deeper understanding of those things. So we in academic affairs have in view a very ambitious goal that builds on our May 2025 statement that was co-endorsed by two key university presidents associations, the Association of American Universities, or AAU, and the American Council on Education, ACE. That statement commits AJC to working with universities on transparent, accountable strategies for consequential reform at their institutions. And we take that commitment, of course, extremely seriously. And our work, which we outline in our action plan for administrators, takes a whole of university approach to that work. It includes student culture, intellectual culture, and leadership culture. And we really want to see vision-driven change by university leaders who are committed to leading, committed to operationalizing their vision across every sector of their institutions. I know that many of you in recent months have heard Andrew Martin of WashU express how he's done that, and WashU is one example of a school that we're working closely with this year. In the kind of big picture view, in order to positively impact higher education on the whole, we need to choose our pioneering partners very, very carefully. Right now, for us, that means intensive and very focused work with schools that are themselves highly influential in the field of higher ed on the whole. This academic year, we're focusing on large AAU member research institutions, and those schools really create the standards that other schools then turn to and often emulate. And we are focusing our work on schools where there are large numbers of Jewish students and critical change-making stakeholders within the university. So that means partners in university leadership, partners in the provost's office to deal with intellectual culture and faculty, and partners in directors of student life who deal with things like cultures of exclusion and the demonization of Zionists that we hear about from students. We choose our partners very, very carefully and with an awareness of who is equipped to take on this work towards reform. Campus anti-Semitism is a scourge, and the best way to address it is by leaning further into, not away from, standards of academic freedom that create clear structures of accountability for all members of the academic community, and cultures that lean into rather than fleeing from challenging, genuinely challenging conversations, and robust engagement with complex topics, including Israel. Disincentivizing activist classrooms is vital. Creating a roadmap for inclusion that is truly inclusive is also vital. We work hard with partners in university leadership who are committed to updating their policies wherever that's needed and committed to applying those policies evenly and instilling a sense of accountability in every member of their academic communities. Those are the asks that we make of the universities that we work with, and it's because we've developed such trusted relationships with key schools that we're able to be in the room with them, making clear why those asks matter, while we remain in active working conversation with universities about institutional reform. So you can see that this approach has been part of the fabric of CEA for some time now. And it's been evidenced in initiatives like the University President's Summit that AJC hosted that Laura referenced at the start of this call that was co-organized by the American Council on Education and Hillel International. And also in the unprecedented joint statement that we issued with AAU and ACE last spring. And you'll see it over the coming year in the work that we'll be doing with a key cohort of AAU schools. Our action plan continues to function as our North Star, our roadmap in this work. This is work that excites us. It's work that personally gets me out of bed in the morning wanting to continue to engage in this work of creating responsible change in higher education.
Thank you so much, Sarah. While universities often get the lion's share of media attention, we know that the challenges that we face actually first surface in some ways in kindergarten through 12th grade spaces. So right now I'd like to welcome Erin Bregman, our Director of High School Affairs, and Ira Glasser, our Director of K through 12 Education in New York. Erin and Ira, you both share extensive experience as classroom educators and administrators. I often say that if we added up all the years that the CEA staff has been teaching, it'd probably be about a century, maybe not quite, but close. If you could both of you share a bit about CEA's approach to partnering with K through 12 schools.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. I'd love to. So our vision is really simple. every Jewish student should be able to learn and thrive in schools that are safe, that are inclusive, and really grounded in sound educational practices. So like you mentioned, our team comes from the classroom, comes from school leadership. So we really understand how schools operate and how to make change for the long term. So our goal is always to help schools be proactive rather than reactive. Our resources and our workshops equip schools and educators with the tools they need to become lasting partners with the Jewish community, which means that we know every school is unique. So that means they have their own needs, their own values, their own culture. And that's why we don't take a one-size-fits-all approach. We really do this by building relationships before a crisis hits to create solutions tailored to each specific community. And all of this really reflects our approach, which is working hand in hand with schools, not only to respond when something goes wrong, but really to raise awareness and put safeguards in place so Jewish students feel supported every day.
Exactly. And as Laura, as you and as Sarah mentioned, we have an action plan for K-12 school administrators that provides a roadmap for school leaders in both public and independent schools. Through cultivating trusted relationships with school leaders, as Aaron mentioned, AJC has become the go-to resource when schools need help, whether it's responding to anti-Semitic incidents, reshaping school policies, or creating positive and trusted partnerships with Jewish families and school administrators. I'll also note that our toolkits for parents and students directly align with the roadmap that we provide for school leaders.
Can you both share a little bit more about what our work looks like in practice?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'd love to. So here's an example. When the Gaza war commenced, many schools began facing questions about enforcing their ideas of dress code policies. What did that look like? So we really helped a lot of schools, several independent schools really toward a policy that supported Jewish students, but really still helped reflect their broader school values. So I would say, in addition to that, we also have our overarching K-12 action plans. We have our October 7th anniversary guidance, which you mentioned earlier. We also have our guide to Jewish holidays and culture, which actually includes a 5-year calendar to help schools avoid any schedule any major events on Jewish holidays.
Which is a real problem, and it happens all the time, which is ridiculous.
Yeah,
the lowest hanging
exactly.
fruit. Yeah.
So, through all that, we've developed guidance to help educators integrate also Jewish experiences into existing curriculum. So, for example, if you want to teach Jewish immigration and American history, or you want to highlight the evolution of the Middle East after 1967, we do our best to support best practices and use trusted curriculum providers that are supporters and partners of AJC.
And on a more local level, and thanks to generous donor support, CEA has embedded me as an educator and former school administrator in the New York region. This means New York City school leaders and parents know exactly who to contact when questions arise, whether it's about anti-Semitic incidents, curriculum concerns, or a policy that might need to be updated or enforced, as Aaron mentioned, with respect to dress codes. And I'm able to provide one-on-one guidance, bring administrators together to share best practices, and build a genuine network of support across the New York City independent school community. And it has been incredibly transformative. And it's clearly a model that shows what is possible when we invest in long-term relationships rather than just reacting to crises. As you mentioned, Laura, you mentioned the summit that we hosted with NYU Center for the Study of Anti-Semitism. At that summit, CEA convened more than 160 educators and educational leaders from 32 independent schools in New York City. And just yesterday, we held a follow-up meeting with representatives from 16 of those schools. And it was incredibly inspirational to be in that room with those educators and educational leaders.
I'll just note I was there too, and it was absolutely inspirational, particularly to watch you, Ira, in action with them.
Thank you. We host webinars with top educational leaders and scholars about the best practices in teaching. We speak at local and national conferences about issues that are germane to the Jewish community, from Jewish identity and anti-Semitism to effective teaching about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We have taken multiple heads of independent schools to Israel through AJC Project Interchange, with many more eager to participate. And all of these experiences and all of these resources and all of this relation and all of the resources that we provide deepen our relationship with school leaders, and we become the trusted resource that they need.
It's amazing, you can see as everybody speaks how everyone is implementing this, our overarching theory of change. And that gives me enormous gratitude and peace of mind to know that we've created this unified theory. Thank you so much, Erin and Ira. So now we're going to shift our focus from administrator-facing work to student-facing leadership development and education. We're going to keep Erin on the screen because he wears two hats for us, and we'll be joined by Moosh Lenser, our Director of Campus Affairs. So Erin, could you start by telling us a little bit about our amazing award-winning Leaders for Tomorrow program? And then Moosh, if you could talk a little bit about our work with student leaders on college campuses.
It would be my pleasure. So let's put it this way. Think about it in this sort of form. When we equip young people with the skills to be competent advocates today, we're really directly building that next generation of Jewish leaders. So that's the vision behind the program Leaders for Tomorrow, or LIFT for short, which AJC has been running now for 13 years, which means we have over 3,000 LIFT alumni. LIFT, for those who don't know, is a 7-month leadership development program that empowers Jewish high school students. So we do this through dynamic monthly sessions. We also have a capstone advocacy experience where students come to Washington, D.C. Throughout this program, we explore Jewish identity, we engage with Israel's story, and we really build critical advocacy skills and leadership skills for when they go off to campus. And today, I'm really happy to share that LIFT operates in 12 of our AJC offices across the country, along with a national virtual cohort as well. So we're actually going to drop a link in the chat to a short video, which actually highlights how a LIFT student really used her training to make real difference in her community. And I just want to note for everyone on the call that actually this summer, we received more applications than we've ever had before. We're actually almost at capacity. So if you know a high school student who is interested in a program like this, please have them apply ASAP because we're about to close for the year. And so with that, obviously we have our students and we want to make sure that they're set up for success to go off to college. So I want to now hand it off to Moosh, who will talk more about our continued work and when students go to college.
Thanks, Erin. As the Director of Campus Affairs at AJC, I have the privilege of working alongside truly inspiring young leaders who are proud Jews and incredibly resilient in the face of challenges they encounter every day on campus. And today, Jewish students truly are on the front lines. From the classroom to the quad, they face hostile campuses and never-ending efforts to boycott the state of Israel. But as leaders, they're not only fighting against anti-Semitism, they're also fighting to ensure that all Jewish students can thrive and celebrate being Jewish with pride. AJC's emphasis on cultivating the next generation of Jewish leaders is, simply crucial to ensuring that there is a vibrant future for Jewish communities in America, but also around the world. So how do we develop these Jewish leaders? We give them opportunities to build serious skills in advocacy, diplomacy, coalition building, and we give them opportunities to meet and collaborate with their peers on campuses all over the world. Campus Affairs manages 3 major leadership development programs. The first is the Campus Global Board, which consists of 30 incredibly impressive college students from around the world who serve on the board for a year, sometimes more, and we provide them with advocacy training, mentorship, and opportunities for international travel and engagement. The second is the campus track at AJC's Global Forum, which attracts over 200 students from dozens of countries around the world. We bring them together, do a Shabbaton before the conference starts, to prepare them to engage directly with diplomats, policymakers, and world leaders, which they then do at Global Forum. And lastly, we have the Goldman Summer Fellowship Program, which is a highly selective, paid internship that places students at AJC offices around the world. Each fellow is assigned a significant special project with real-world impact. They've organized diplomatic roundtables, they've done interfaith missions around the US, they've done Jewish Latinos programs, and even designed the marketing strategy for AJC's People of the Pod podcast. It's truly a unique opportunity and often cements the students' commitment for being a lifelong Jewish advocate.
Actually, Moosh, I'm going to just, while you talk about Goldman Fellows, just maybe think of something here. Think about our educational arc, which is that it's actually a perfect example. A few years ago, we had a LIFT student named Meredith, who was from Philadelphia, who graduated. She went off to college. And in fact, she then applied to become a Goldman Fellow. And actually, this past summer, she worked in AJC's High School Affairs, our team, to help work on a project to strengthen actually the LIFT program. She provided her own insight from her experience, what she thinks high school students need today. So really, she was helping students today prepare for college tomorrow. So I thought that was a nice little example to add to that.
Great example.
Thank you, Aaron. I completely agree. And I'm glad you shared that because Meredith, by the way, is one of many LIFT alumni who have participated in different campus affair programs since graduating high school. So I'll wrap it up by emphasizing this. AJC's high school and campus affairs departments stand with Jewish students and their allies. We work alongside these amazing students, helping them navigate and how to build lasting relationships and coalitions. We help train them on how to communicate and advocate in ways that are truly effective. And we provide them with hands-on, life-changing educational experiences. All of this helps shape campuses to not only be safe, but also to be open and supportive of Jewish life. By investing in student leaders, AJC is in the forefront of building a pipeline of thoughtful, skilled advocates who will shape Jewish life and policies for decades to come.
Thank you so much, Moosh and Aaron. And as someone who's been able to teach and lift sessions and to work with our Goldman Fellows, we always have a few who work in the Center for Education Advocacy. I can just echo everything you said about how unbelievably talented these students are, how passionate they are about the Jewish people, and what an honor it is for us at AJC to be able to partner with them as they continue on their advocacy journey. We're going to close this section with Lindsay Mintz, our Director of Training and Engagement, who facilitates AJC's Empowered Parents program. Lindsay, can you share a little bit about our work supporting parents of Jewish students in K-12 schools and what makes that different, our work different, from other approaches to addressing school anti-Semitism?
Thank you, of course, Laura. So what we're seeing is really heartbreaking. Jewish families being isolated and overwhelmed as anti-Semitism surges in their children's schools. I get it. Even I struggle sometimes, but here's what we've learned. Families who create real change aren't the ones who go in swinging their fists. They understand that sustainable change requires moving beyond zero-sum thinking to building bridges. And AJC's Empowered Parents program does that, just that. It grows out of this insight. We're teaching parents to be strategic rather than combative. When a Jewish parent walks into a principal's office ready to share AJC's action plans and resources, all of the links that we've shared previously in the chat, they're offering to be a trusted partner in creating an educational environment where critical thinking, viewpoint diversity, and fact-based inquiry can actually flourish. This gets to CEA's mission, that education spaces that are resilient against anti-Semitism actually strengthen our democracy for the long term. And this is our theory of change that we've mentioned several times. And parents play a critical role. We provide them with the resources like our 10-step guide and our toolkit and many others. And this gives them the knowledge and also some practical strategies for what to do, what to say, what to do next.
Great. So let's talk about those practical strategies. What specific actions do you want parents to take? I'm sure we have a lot of parents in the audience today. What specific actions do you want parents to take, and how do you measure success?
So here's what I tell parents. And this is a question that we often get, which is, I don't know the history. I don't know what to say exactly. You don't need to be an expert on Jewish history, on the history of anti-Semitism, on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. You are already the expert on your child. Support them first. Listening through regular check-ins about school dynamics, paying attention to the classroom assignments that they're bringing home, brainstorming together when challenges arise, and giving them space to process before we shift into advocacy mode. That sounds simple, but it's really a critical first step. So then we give them this clear action plan, which is simple on its face, but requires really focused and dedicated work from our parents. Build the relationship with administrators and teachers, keeping lines of communication open and constructive for as long as possible. and then share our resources and guidance docs. Usually in person is best, so that's where the building the relationship comes in. Listen, school leaders tell us how much they appreciate having these concrete action steps that they can put into practice. That's where Erin and Ira are giving, right? These are the action plan for admin. And when a parent comes to them to hand that over, they see that the parent is coming as a partner and not as an adversary. Administrators and teachers, they generally really do want to do right by their students. They just lack the knowledge to understand the Jewish community and our history. And they lack the specific steps that it'll take to address and even prevent anti-Semitism for the long term. So from there, we give parents tools how to move into some proactive advocacy. And that may also just be sharing some of our documents as well, like our 5-year calendar, and is an excellent tool, even for young kids, to hand over to their teacher at the beginning of the school year. This is when I'm going to be gone for Rosh Hashanah. That's being an advocate, you know, and that's so important. So we've got all of our guidance docs. Parents can request that schools do more around Jewish American Heritage Month. We have a whole toolkit there. And parents also are looking to connect with other parents. How do we measure these outcomes? Well, we start asking questions. Are teachers receiving some professional development about Jewish peoplehood and anti-Semitism? Are reporting mechanisms in place and easily accessible for families? Are Jewish experiences over time included across the curriculum beyond just the Holocaust? Success looks different everywhere, but we know that we're moving that proverbial needle when principals see their Jewish parents as a resource, when schools reach out to AJC for professional development, and when Jewish students themselves report feeling safer and seen. What makes me so proud is hearing from parents who feel empowered instead of overwhelmed, strategic instead of reactive. I use these resources with my teenagers' schools, and I see how well administrators respond when you approach them as a partner. So we distribute these resources nationwide because, as we've said, every Jewish child deserves an educational environment free from anti-Semitism. And this, again, goes back to protecting democratic values. When we teach young people, all young people, how to engage across difference, think critically, resist conspiratorial thinking, we're building the civic leaders that our country needs. At the end of the day, what I say to parents, our most important job is protecting our kids from anti-Semitism, yes, but it's really ensuring that they are proud to be Jewish and that they know their heritage is something beautiful to celebrate. When kids have that Jewish pride and connection, they become natural advocates for themselves and for the community, and they can navigate challenges from strength rather than fear.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. That's so inspirational. And I've seen your work with parents, and I know how unbelievably impactful it is. So I hope that all those parents out there will join us in these efforts. As our time together comes to an end, I wanted to share a thought about this very special time in the Jewish year. Always the Jewish educator. As many of you know, we're currently in the Hebrew month of Tishrei, which is the Jewish fall holiday season. And tomorrow night actually begins Yom Kippur, which is the holiest day of the Jewish year. And during Yom Kippur, Jews traditionally recite a confession of sins multiple times, again and again. And the language for that confession is noteworthy. We say, Al chet shechatanu lefanecha, for the sin that we sinned before you, God. What's striking there is the use of the first person plural, the word we. We join together as a community to recite our sins, even though each one of us might not be guilty of every transgression that we confess. Why do we speak collectively? So tradition teaches us that this emphasizes communal responsibility. We are all responsible for our community, for our society. Each one of us has a role to play in ensuring not only that we individually don't sin, but that the structures are in place to prevent wrongdoing. Each of us has to have in mind the society we want to build together. And for me, and I hope for all of you, this message resonates so deeply with our CEA work in education. When we instill the value of communal responsibility, we recognize that everyone, Jewish community members and educators alike, and of course there's overlap between those two groups, have to work together to build schools that refuse to normalize anti-Semitism in any form, that are inclusive of Jews and indeed of all students, and that are rooted in critical thinking, viewpoint diversity, and fact-based inquiry. Jewish community members and educators alike, we are all part of the solution to build schools that will support the Jewish community and our democracy into the future. I want to thank everyone so much for joining us today and for being our critical partners in creating educational environments where every Jewish student can thrive. We're going to drop in the chat a link to a brief survey. We promise less than 5 minutes to complete. Please take a moment to share your feedback with us so we can better serve educators and Jewish families. For those who celebrate, AJC and the CEA team wish you a Shana Tova and a Ktiva v'Chatima Tova. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura, and to all of our CEA experts for joining us today. And thank you to our global audience for tuning in. To find all of the resources mentioned in today's webinar, please visit www.ajc.org/back-to-school resources. Thank you again and goodbye.